Can everybody see the screen now? Okay.
Yes, it's
All right.
great.
So welcome. In the Philippines, we say mabuhay. So this is the first meeting of the Asia Pacific Marine Turtle Genetic Working Group. It is truly a great pleasure to have you all here today. So good wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but not yet good night because we have just started. So it is my great pleasure to open this first workshop and to give you a brief introduction on the scope of the working group and its composition. I will then be allowed by the I will then be it will then be followed by the first presentation on the role of genetics in marine turtle conservation and management from Dr. Peter Dutton and Dr. Michael Jensen. This will be followed by a Q&A session before welcoming on the virtual stage our panelists to briefly discuss opportunities and barriers for collaboration. I will then be back for the closing remarks and to introduce you to workshop 2. But before we dive deep into the main part of the workshop, let me first introduce myself and tell you a bit more about how this series of workshops came about. So I am Ian Pontanilla. I am from the Institute of Biology, University of the Philippines, Diliman. I head the DNA barcoding laboratory, and I have to say, put this disclaimer at the outset. I'm not a turtle biologist, and especially a turtle geneticist, but I have been working on DNA of many organisms. Uh, in particular, my lab has been working together with the Philippine Department of Environment and Natural Resources Biodiversity Management Bureau in combating illegal wildlife trade. So our lab has also had to deal with confiscated marine turtles. So this is how I got involved with turtles. So nevertheless, there are recognized gaps in population genetics of these turtles, particularly in the provenance of these turtles and the state of their populations. We have also worked with Lamave on optimizing DNA extraction from marine turtles. And lastly, in 2018, we started a collaboration with Lamave, which was supported by NOAA and the WWF US, and in collaboration with WWF Philippines and Australia to provide support to our national government to analyze samples from across the country, including nesting and foraging, as well as interdicted specimens and jewelry. And this is how I became involved with the Asia Pacific Marine Turtle Genetic Working Group. So I know the name of this working group is quite a mouthful, but we wanted to be sure to capture its geographic scope and its nature as a working group. We initially intended to have an alliance or a consortium, if you may, but then we thought that maybe a working group will be less political and will focus more on collaborative works. The initial activity plan seemed simple and was supposed to start with an in person or face to face workshop in Manila last year in 2020. But with COVID locking our borders and after several postponements for over a year, we decided to go ahead and start the collaboration with an online platform. So why the regional scope? As you all know, the Asia Pacific region hosts many globally significant nesting and foraging populations of the 6 species of marine turtles. So you have the leatherback green, loggerhead, flatback, hawksbill, and the olive ridley. And while some of these populations of these marine turtles seem to be recovering, exploitation is still rampant, and the threats, including illegal wildlife trade and climate change, are still persistent. Several collaborative genetic studies have been successfully conducted across the region, but large gaps still exist. At the same time, access to genetic laboratories is becoming more and more common, and an increasing number of studies in the region are incorporating genetic aspects into their projects. Given, given the increased accessibility of samples, equipment, and expertise, we believe there is a need to enhance an in-country capacity and provide the venue to further our transboundary collaboration. So to initiate and push forward the initiative, a preliminary steering committee was created last year and has been meeting weekly since the pandemic began, coming together from different regions, experience, and background to initiate the conversation and set the cornerstone to allow the working group to grow. So some faces may be more familiar to you than others, but everyone contributed to get where we are today. So I would love to extend my gratitude to the rest of the committee, beginning with Gonzo Arajo and Alessandro Ponzo from Lamave. We also have Peter Dutton from NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center of the United States, yours truly. And then we have Alexander Gauss from NOAA Fisheries Pacific Islands Fisheries Science Center. Christine Madden-Hoff of the Worldwide Fund for Nature Australia, Michael Jensen from Worldwide Fund for Nature Australia, Juanita Joseph from the Borneo Marine Research Institute, University of Malaysia, Sabah, and Mike Osmond from the Worldwide Fund for Nature USA, and of course John Wang from the NOAA Fisheries Pacific Islands Fisheries Science Center. Across these seven workshops, we hope to be able to know each other better and build connection and trust. And by the end of the summer, to be able to set up a committee to ensure the continuation of the working group, as well as a regional and topic specific coordinators, or whatever internal structure the group together will decide will be best. The initial role of the committee was to facilitate the creation of the working group uh, and to support the establishment of a regional collaborative network to facilitate genetic studies, provide a platform to enhance and expand in-country technical capacity, and to organize a series of workshops in person and online, maybe mostly online, but hopefully we can do this in person as well, to support the work of the working group. So, a series of preliminary objectives for the working group were identified and will be refined and expanded during the course of the year as we also incorporate feedback from the participants. So, these preliminary objectives include number one, to create a directory of individuals, groups, and institutions currently involved in genetics research. Number two, identify and prioritize conservation knowledge gaps that can be solved with the genetic approach. Number three, consolidate existing regional best practice protocols and standardized genetic analysis protocols and pipelines for priority research questions. Number four, provide training to provide training to enhance in-country capacity to conduct genetic research. Number five, to support the development of a regional collaborative digital sample database and the identification of the most appropriate mechanisms for data sharing. Number six, identify and create a directory of relevant government agencies, points of contact, and permit processes and provide support to enhance their understanding of the role that genetics can play in policy and legislative decision making. And last but not the least, number seven, to create a long-term plan for the Asia Pacific Marine Turtle Working Group, or the APMTWG, to include including identifying mechanisms for collaborations, determining structure and the size of the working group and subgroups, and identifying the steering committee. But before we move any further, we would love to thank all the organizations that have been supporting us financially and logistically in this endeavor. So we have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services Wildlife Without Borders, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, the University of the Philippines, the Large Marine Vertebrates Research Institute of the Philippines, and Borneo Marine Research Institute, University of Malaysia, Sabah. And of course, we would also like to thank the technical team that has been and will be working behind the scene to ensure the smooth implementation of the workshops, prepare the website, and support future collaborative outputs. So I would like to thank Lorraine Aplaska and Sue Ong, and also Martina Spakowski, Jessica Labaja, Christine Legaspi, Ariana Agustines, and Sally Snow. So thank you very much. We would have done it without your technical support. Now, as many recent studies have shown, the intricacy and complexity of solving many of the issues affecting sea turtle conservation has grown significantly in the last century. Now, I love the visual impact of these diagrams shown, which we obtained from Miller et al., which shows the increasing complexity of tortoise shell trade routes since the 1850s, as shown in the top row, and how the epicenter of the harvest then, now the epicenter of IUU, sits in the waters between each of our countries, shown in the bottom row. Complex transboundary issues require strong collaboration, and that is why everyone's involvement is fundamental. With this, we would love to take a few minutes to acknowledge the participants of today's workshop, as well as a few people that couldn't make it today but have expressed their interest of being part of this working group. So I will introduce the different participants from the different countries. So we begin with Cambodia. Before I proceed further, I would like to apologize in advance if I happen to mispronounce your names. When we get the chance, do correct me later on how to pronounce your names. So number one, from Cambodia, we have Sar Kim from the Fauna and Flora International, Cambodia. From Thailand, we have Janjira Favaputanon and Pumate Chomshat from the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Kasetsart University. We also have Stephen G. Dunbar from the Marine Research Group, Department of Earth and Biological Sciences, Loma Linda University, also from the Protective Turtle Ecology Center for Training, Outreach, and Research, or Protector Incorporated. We also have Tori Bolin from Loma Linda University and Wachara Sakorwinon from the Phuket Marine Biology Center. From Myanmar, we have Ko Min from University of Yangon and Salai Mon Nhi Nhi Lin from Fauna and Flora International, Myanmar. From Vietnam, we have Kuong Thi Chu from the Institute of Marine Environment and Resources. From Japan, we have Hideaki Nishizawa from the Graduate School of Informatics, Kyoto University, and Tomoko Hamabata from the Graduate School of Life Sciences, Tohoku University. From Hong Kong, we have Connie Ka Yan Ang, Vice Chair of the East Asia Region IUCN Marine Turtle Specialist Group. And we also have a large contingent from Malaysia. We have Gavin Jolis from the Borneo Marine Research Institute, University Malaysia, Sabah, also from the Worldwide Fund for Nature. We've also introduced to you Juanita Joseph a while ago from the Borneo Marine Research Institute. We also have Nicholas Pilcher from Marine Research Foundation Asia, Nur Hartini Kamalia Yaya from the Danau Gilang Field Center Sabah, Mod Uzair Rusli, Sea Turtle Research Unit, Institute of Oceanography and Environment, University Malaysia Terengganu, Muhammad Hafiz Borkhanuddin from the Faculty of Science and Marine Environment, University Malaysia Terengganu. From the Philippines, we have the following. You've already met Alessandro Ponzo and Gonzalo Araujo from the Large Marine Vertebrates Research Institute, or LAMAVE, Philippines. We have Benedict Maralit from the University of the Philippines, Philippine Genome Center, yours truly. And then Rachel Ravago Gotanco, also from the University of the Philippines, from Marine Science Institute Molecular Ecology Lab. Maylo Diezmos from the University of Santo Tomas, and Risa Araceli Salinas from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources Biodiversity Management Bureau. From Indonesia, we have the largest contingent. We have Awaluddin from the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Sia Kuala University. And then we have Abdul Hamid A. Toha and Diasi Lonto from University of Papua. We also have Adriano Sembiring, Juliana Siamsuni, and Nikadek Dita Kayani from the Yayasan Biodiversitas Indonesia. We have Adela Hamerikova from the Faculty of Environmental Sciences, Czech University of Life Sciences, also from Liberec Zoo, and from Sia Kuala University. We also have Dewi Suprapti from the Worldwide Fund for Nature, Haris H. Madupa from the Institute Pertanian Bogor, Kiki Dethmers from the Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research and Charles Darwin University, and Maudi Dio Suhandra from the Indonesian Aquatic Megafauna Flying Bat Association, and Ratna Ningsi from the Fauna and Flora International Indonesia. From Singapore, we have here Lib Kim from the Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and Regine Chong from the Singapore Center of Environmental Life Sciences and Engineering, Nanyang Technological University. From Australia, we have Christine Madden-Hoff from the Worldwide Fund for Nature Australia and Nancy Fitzsimmons from the Griffith University and Queensland Department of Environment and Science. We also have international partners. We have Amy Frey and Erin Lacasella from the NOAA Marine Turtle Genetics Program, Alexander Goss, John Wang, and Summer Martin from the NOAA Fisheries Pacific Islands Fisheries Science Center, Peter Dutton of NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center, Manjula Tiwari from the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center and Ocean Ecology Network, George Balas from the Global Independent Sea Turtle Scientist, who is a Global Independent Sea Turtle Scientist, Michael P. Jensen from the Worldwide Fund for Nature Australia, also from Aalborg University, Mike Osmond from the Worldwide Fund for Nature USA, and Rose McEwing from the Tools and Resources for Applied Conservation and Enforcement, or CHASE Wildlife Forensics Network. So we would like to thank all our international participants and all our regional participants for being part of this first workshop, and we hope to see you in all the other 6 workshops and even beyond. So lastly, before moving on to the first set of speakers of the day, I would love to share with you a few slides from the initial survey that most of you have submitted in the last quarter of 2020. So as you can see, we have a great representation from the region today, and hopefully this group will continue to grow in the next coming months. So if we look at the level of expertise and the amount of work done collectively, both in terms of marine turtle conservation and genetic work, is really impressive. So much so that if we accumulate all the work that we have done, it's equivalent to saying that we are as wise as a Ming, an ocean quanhog, around 507 years old, known to be the oldest recorded animal, or double the age of Jonathan, the oldest living tortoise, at 186 years old. So this is quite incredible if we get our cumulative experience. And when we look at the reach of the participants' work, it covers most of the marine turtle global range. As shown here, the dark blue areas marked here represent our coverage. Now, most of the participants are involved in the academe and NGOs, with many involved in more than one group. For example, there are some that are part of the government who are also part of the academe. Now, when we ask about the participants' experience, most people self-assess themselves as having practical knowledge, with over 70% or people having a medium to high experience in tissue sample collection and preservation. This, however, decreased to 60% for experience in database management, and furthermore around 50% on permitting or securing permits. This highlights the value of expanding the knowledge in this area that will be discussed hopefully during workshop 3. With regards to genetic analysis, many people have a great experience in the extraction and sequencing part of the process. But as you can see from this slide, the confidence declines steeply when talking about statistical analysis, with 60% of respondents, roughly 60% of respondents, having little to no experience in this. Luckily, the 4th workshop in April will address this. In terms of experience in genomics and other new techniques, the majority of the respondents have limited knowledge in genomics, eDNA or environmental DNA, and in the use of portable labs. So this is around 86%. And we are hoping that workshop 5 will be able to focus on this. With regards to the level of interest, statistical analysis and database management received the most response, with 72% of the participants indicating willingness to learn more about statistical analysis. Similarly, New techniques, bioinformatics, and the application of genetics to illegal wildlife trade scored the highest. These topics will be addressed across most of the workshops, particularly workshops 5 and 6. Now, there are other topics that were proposed, spanning from the cultural aspects associated with sample collection to epigenetics and to the communication of scientific results to the general public. We will discuss in the coming months how to include these topics in the 7 workshops or see whether we should add more workshops as necessary. So we now go to the description of the workshops. The 7 workshops will try to cover most topics from study design and field collection to the presentation and interpretation of results. Workshop 1 is in full swing right now, and in a few minutes we will see the first set of speakers. Workshop 2 will be hosted in a month on February 24, so please mark your calendars. And we will provide an opportunity for all the participants to share some of their work and introduce themselves or their group to provide an overview of the situation in the region. So we will provide you a template and some instructions later on towards the closing remarks. Workshop 3 will focus on sampling techniques, sample preservation, and long-term storage, as well as how to manage and organize a tissue sample database. It will also touch on permitting or securing permits locally and internationally. A few participants will be invited to present their local current situation, and solutions will be discussed as a group. For the 4th workshop, the focus is on MSA and Wookery stock structure, from sampling design to software pipeline. It will be technical, and the speakers will showcase how these have been implemented across the region. Workshop 5 will introduce new techniques and opportunities presented by genomics and eDNA. It will also touch on the value of small portable labs and sequencers, especially in light of the current situation, where many labs have been running at minimal capacity or in some cases have been repurposed to support COVID-19 testing. Workshop 6 will present an overview of illegal wildlife trade and the role that genetics can play a role to support can play to support the enforcement and management. Case study from Shell Bank will be presented, and an in-depth session will be provided on the extraction of genetic materials from, excuse me, bases and byproducts of these or products from these uh, organisms such as jewelry. Now, workshop 7 will provide an opportunity to wrap up the series and to decide together as a group the direction of the Asia Pacific Marine Turtle Genetic Working Group. And hopefully by the 7th workshop, we have already memorized the name of this working group, the Asia Pacific Marine Turtle Genetic Working Group. So there will be space to discuss structure, participants' roles and involvement, and plan for the next steps. All the draft materials, minutes, reports prepared during the workshop series will be presented to the participants and discussed for publication, how they will be published. So without further ado, let us now go to the 2 speakers. Our first talk for this workshop. So let me introduce our speakers for today. So Dr. Peter H. Dutton started at the Southwest Fisheries Science Center, or SWFSC, in 1995, where he is the leader of the Marine Turtle Genetics Program that serves as NOAA's Fisheries National Marine Turtle Genetics Laboratory. His research interests include the evolution, ecology, and conservation biology of marine turtles. Peter received a bachelor's degree in biology in 1980 from Stirling University in Scotland, and then emigrated to Suriname, where he began working with leatherback and green turtles from 1981 to 1984, and conducted research on the effects of temperature on sex determination at the University of Toronto. He earned a master's degree in ecology in 1988 from the San Diego State University and a PhD in zoology from Texas A&M University in 1995. He was awarded a National Research Council postdoctoral fellowship at the SWFSC from 1995 to 1997 to develop and apply genetic approaches to decline sea turtle stock structure, to define, sorry, the sea turtle stock structure and conduct stock ID of sea turtle fisheries bycatch. Peter is actively engaged with a network of collaborators across the world on projects related to conservation genetics, population assessment, and marine policy. Our next speaker is Dr. Michael Jensen, who is from the Marine Science Species Genetics, who is the Marine Species Genetics Coordinator for the Worldwide Fund Australia, working on developing genetic tools to combat the illegal trade in hawksbill products. He completed his PhD in Australia and then went on to working 8 years at the Southwest Fisheries Science Center under Peter Dutton. His research is focused on using genetic tools to develop science-based solutions for the conservation and management of sea turtles and has worked extensively throughout the Indo-Pacific. Michael is now back in his native Denmark, where he continues his work for WWF and is also a research fellow at the University of Aalborg. So, thank you for that. Thank you for coming here, and we would like to welcome you to the first workshop. So we will now proceed to our first